Well, we have time for a couple more questions here, Jim. This next one was sent in the cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Burke in Green River, Wyoming.
This is by the way, the first question we've ever had on the program from Green River, Wyoming.
I believe so. Who knows? Maybe Burke will be the next Charlie from Starkville and put Green River on the map. We'll find out with this question. Jim, I've often wondered if Vince McMahon ever considered firing Shawn instead of Bret in 1997. It might not have saved him as much money, but I think an argument could have been made that it would have been the better decision. By all accounts, Shawn was unreliable, irritable, unprofessional, and buried deep in addiction at this time. An argument for firing him could be easily made. Sure, he could have gone to WCW and joined the NWO with his buddies, but if history teaches us anything, it's that Eric Bischoff wouldn't have known what to do with him and would have squandered any momentum he brought. With Shawn gone, the WWF could have booked Austin to beat Bret at WrestleMania 14 in a rematch from their classic WrestleMania 13 match, and being able to look in hindsight, WWF would have had Austin, Bret, and Undertaker established with Triple H, Mick Foley, Triple H, listed here twice.
Yeah, Triple H, I'm sure he would have taken up 2 spots.
Kurt Angle and The Rock yet to emerge. They would further have had Y2J and The Big Show coming along, and I think the roster might have been better. The fact we never got Bret versus Kurt Angle is one of the biggest missed matches of all time, in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
Well, yes, and as my mother used to say, if a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass on the ground. If we'd have known all this stuff afterwards, because he even made the mention in the questions, as history has shown us, a lot of those things you didn't actually know then, and didn't know the Big Show was coming, didn't know Y2J, et cetera, et cetera. But I agree with you from a personal standpoint that I would have much rather seen Vince keep Bret and let Shawn go. But having said that, no, he never did consider it. He didn't fire either one of them. And in his mind, he didn't fire either one of them. He told Bret, I cannot honor this contract. See if you can get the deal that they offered you before, and we will part amicably. That in Vince's mind, he was not firing Bret. He would have not fired either one of them. And he didn't want to have to get rid of one of them. Vince got fixated, whether reasonably so or irrationally so, on the amount of Bret's contract when he got those bad financial reports and shit was going south that year. And he didn't know that he was a year away from a mega turnaround. That's one of those things you don't know until you bump your ass on the ground, right? So he would have kept both of them if he could, and the only reason he wanted to lose one was because of the burdensome amount of the contract. It's not like one of them had to go in Vince's mind. In their minds, one of them needed to go, and it was the other one, to whichever one was thinking it. So that's the way all that stuff had. Yes, it would have been wonderful if it had worked out the other way, but it didn't because of those reasons, and nobody knew some of those things were going to happen to begin with. And at the time, I had confidence that WCW couldn't last because I was seeing not only the product, but you heard the stories of how they put the product together and how fucking bumblefucked and irrational a lot of the decisions were, or last minute or whatever. And I always had confidence over the long run that the WWF would beat them simply because it was a more professionally run organization, whether you liked the product or not. It wasn't and even if you couldn't say it wasn't a bunch of nuts running the WWF, at least they were a bunch of talented nuts at running a somewhat stable company. Instead of people getting fucking hot and cold depending on what day the wind was blowing, like WCW had and continued to do at that point for years. So, all of that stuff would have worked out great, but it wasn't going to happen that way.
It would have affected the development of the Mr. McMahon character, obviously, if Bret had stayed and Shawn had left. But I do think it would have been a stronger main event for WrestleMania 14. If you had Bret versus Austin, the big rematch, 1 year in the making, with Mike Tyson as the referee. I don't know. I would like to see that.
That and then we wouldn't have to worry on whether everybody was going to do business or not. Oh, and that's the weekend. Michaels was calling and complaining constantly in Boston that weekend. He wasn't going to come. Then he was going to come. Then he needed special security and a separate dressing area and no brown M&Ms and just whatever the fuck that he could do to just fucking keep him on edge and make him think, what the fuck's going to happen with this guy?
Special security from who?
From anybody, just anything special, different, to be a pain in the ass. I'll do this, but I need that. I'll do this, but I need that. Well, I got to have this or whatever. And just planting doubt and harassment in all their minds.